Welcome to Seeking the Sacred Self. I'm your host, Naomi Rozak. Today, I want to talk about this word that feels a little bit uncomfortable. The word is resistance. I want to talk about understanding resistance and blocks. Resistance is almost like a four-letter word to some people. It's the thing that stops you when you want to reach a goal. It's the block inside when you're trying to heal something. It makes people swear and throw in the towel and get heated and book long conversations with girlfriends to try to figure out what this thing is that's stopping you. So let's talk about it, because we all treat resistance like it's the thing in our way that keeps us from what we want, but maybe it's more. So what is resistance? Resistance is an opposing force. It's something pushing against us when we're trying to move forward. When we are pushing, it's pulling us back. We often use the word block, and that describes it a bit better, a bit more in a feeling way. So when we're talking healing, we want to heal. We have a goal in mind. We are going to feel our pain, and we're going to process our trauma, and we're going to heal, damn it. And resistance in healing shows up in a couple of ways. It's just a sense that we don't want to do it, even when we very clearly know that we do want to go there, we do want to heal. A part of us just cannot seem to take that journey. Or there's a very real sense of my whole self wants to do this, but it feels like there is a literal wall right in front of me or right inside me. Have you encountered this? Maybe it's not in healing, maybe it's in something like goal setting. Think about the last time you set a goal. I'm going to give an example. Maybe you're ADHD and you set a goal to drink more water, and this has typically been difficult for you. You set the goal, you fail, you set the goal, you fail. So you might try, you keep water in the kitchen, you're trying to drink as much as you can, and 3 days in, you hit a wall. It's just too hard. But you know that if you keep trying just like this, you're going to burn out because you've tried this many times before. So the primary reason is something is hard about practicing the steps to reach that goal of having a certain amount of water every day. But if you take a minute to sit and reflect, you understand maybe you keep forgetting to carry water around the house. Maybe you keep a cup in the kitchen, but you're only in the kitchen 10% of your day. Maybe you're in the car all the time, and so that cup of water in the kitchen is not going to help you too much. But with reflection, you can find a way to ease your way through that block by figuring out a different way of doing things. What the need is behind the sense of, oh, this is too hard. You just need it to be easier. You need this goal and the steps of it to be accessible. You need it to work for your life. So you switch things up and try something else, maybe a water bottle in the 5 main areas you are in the house during the day, and you refill at any sink when a water bottle's empty. Or you take a drink of water every morning as you make your coffee, and then a drink when you're making each meal, and suddenly you're already like 4 glasses into your hydration journey. That's resistance when we're working towards a goal. And in healing, resistance is very much the same way. We experience it the same way. Resistance is a cue that something about what we want to do or where we want to go is hard. So what does it feel like to bump up against resistance? Let's talk about it in a body sense, because much of what I'm doing here on the podcast is teaching self-awareness of what's coming up in the body, getting more familiar with those feelings so that we can navigate them. So today we're focusing on resistance when we're on a healing journey and we know what we want the next step to be. We know we want to heal, or we know that we would heal if we didn't feel blocked about something. This can be kind of an overall sense of resistance that hangs over us for weeks even, or it can be right in the middle of a 1-hour therapy or healing session or meditative process where we were fine. We were like, yep, I'm going to heal. I'm going deep into these feelings. And then only a few minutes in, this huge resistance comes up. So in the body, resistance is a sense of no, full stop. Everything in your body is just saying no. Resistance feels like being stuck. It's a feeling, I know I should go there, but I don't know what to do to get from here to there. I can't get there. Resistance feels like the wall right in front of your face or within your body. It is feeling physically pulled backward or away from where you want to go, even of your skin crawling. It's a sense of a door or a window inside slamming shut. It's a feeling of, I'm not open to this. We can have a number of physical symptoms that come up really fast when we're feeling resistance, and it may look like sudden body rigidity, inflexibility, or tension, tight muscles, nausea, headache, body pain, a sudden sleepiness, twitching, itching. I've seen people put their hand up around their throat all of a sudden or move their hand to a certain part of their body. They are indicating, even if they're not aware, that they're feeling something that is preventing them from wanting or being able to go further. Resistance can look like avoiding eye contact, or suddenly having your brain jump to a list or an errand and this thing that you shouldn't forget. And then we can also feel confusion, like we can't focus. We're losing our train of thought or our place in a story. These are just some of the many ways resistance can manifest. But it's important to know what resistance is telling us. Resistance is not here to be difficult for us. It is not trying to make life difficult or our healing difficult. It's trying to tell us that something already is hard. And the trouble is, we're so often told to push through and keep trying, to poke a hole in your resistance and like wrestle your way through. But so little attention is given to how hard it can be to try to push through and how actually detrimental it is to ignore resistance or to push through it. We can burn a lot of energy trying to work through something when we aren't even aware what it is. And then we judge ourselves. We think, I should be able to do this. Something is wrong with me that I can't. Don't I want to heal? Or we just quit altogether because that resistance is big and strong and we feel entirely clueless about how to navigate it. But the size of the resistance signals to us we're just not going to be able to do anything about it. But then we feel sad because we really do want to heal, and it's tiring and frustrating to be blocked again and again. Somehow we know if we can get past that resistance, there's something good and beautiful, something that feels better is waiting for us, but we just can't get there. So do we keep pushing, burning all our energy fighting against that resistance, or could there be another way? Could we slow down and find out a little more about that resistance? Like maybe it's there legitimately. Maybe it has something to show us. So let's redefine resistance. Let's figure it out. Let's get really comfortable with it because in healing, there's a secret. Resistance feels like a block in the path of healing, when what it really is the secret doorway to healing. It's the unknown, mysterious rabbit trail side path to unlock what you want fully instead of only catch a glimpse of it, access a fraction of it, or only be able to experience that healing with a part of you. Resistance is not the block in the path. Resistance is the doorway. Resistance does feel like a block, but it has a purpose. It wants to tell you something more than what you are aware of at the moment. Resistance means something about this process and how I'm feeling is unaddressed. There is some disconnection. I'm being asked to become aware of something else before I can go a step further. The question automatically becomes then, what could be some reasons for resistance? We've talked about this a little bit in the past couple of episodes. As in episode 5, we talked about one common resistance is the fear of the unknown. You don't know what will happen if you keep going on this healing process, and you're afraid of that kind of unknown darkness. There's feelings in there. I don't know what they are. I don't know what will happen. That darkness ahead of you. So that's legit, right? And then another we talked about in episode 6 is the fear of what we might find out, a difficult truth awaiting us, or a fear of how big the pain will be and how much we'll feel it. Again, totally legit. And you won't be able to move forward sometimes until you recognize these types of fears and meet the need underlying them, the need for reassurance or support. So, I want to talk about some more reasons for resistance because I've seen a lot of resistance come up both in myself and in clients, and it takes a lot of different forms. I'm still learning a lot about it. I'm still surprised by the many ways it shows up. There's a lot of nuance to it. And so we really should pay attention to that and talk about it so we get more familiar with it. And then we can have this extra tool in our toolbox for healing. So, one of the reasons resistance might show up is that there is an original wound, but there is a secondary wound layered over it. And so we might be trying to heal the original one, but can't get there because of the second one. So, an example might be that you're trying to heal a trauma, but you were rejected by a parent after that traumatic event when you tried to get their support. The feeling of being rejected by a parent is laying on top of the first trauma, and you fear further rejection if you talk about the trauma now. To take it a step further, this might be I've experienced this myself. I'm afraid that if I heal this, then I'll have to be authentic in front of my family, and that would be terrifying. So it feels like I can't even do the healing step because if I do the healing step, that's somehow exposing me and people will know that I'm healing and then I'll have to talk about it. And that's just too frightening. And then, similar to that, is the anxiety might be coming up because when you tried to talk about this traumatic event in the past, not only with the parent, but anyone, you were shut down in some way, not listened to. So it's hard to move past that feeling. A different reason for resistance is that you are tired. You're working on this healing journey, you're trying to get somewhere, but you actually know you don't have the energy to explore that issue right now. Sudden fatigue, like when we're in the middle of a healing session, if fatigue pops up like halfway through, I would say that might be a sign of resistance that we'd want to explore. But in general, if you're dragging yourself to appointments, or if people are suggesting you should be working on healing and you're just like, ugh, that's resistance. And it's resistance for a good reason. You can explore more deeply what that fatigue is telling you. I have had clients fall asleep on the massage table in the middle of a mind body awareness process, and I let them sleep. Some people have been so overgiving and working so hard that rest truly is what they need, in addition to whatever knowledge they've already gained in that session or on their journey. With a situation like this, a client's healing work might first be to find a little more space for rest in their life so that they can go deeper into healing. Let's not discount rest. Rest in itself is a huge part of the healing journey. Another type of resistance may be because you are being supported by a therapist or somatic worker or someone like me, and you don't yet feel comfortable in the relationship. Maybe you feel like you are being observed, you're being watched, and you just don't feel comfortable with that. Maybe you feel like they're the expert and you're the peon. The relationship doesn't feel equal or compassionate or warm, or simply you need more time to get to know that person or to feel at ease. And that's okay. How can we heal when we don't feel completely safe and supported by the environment that we're in? Yet another kind of resistance is that you are new to the process of healing and allowing yourself to feel. A lot of us have been cut off from our emotions. We've been living kind of from the neck up. We're in our thinking, analytical mind all the time. And the inner world, particularly down inside of our body, is vague and unknown. And there are tools and processes to begin to learn how to feel and to be comfortable with feeling. But you can't just deep dive in a day. It does take time to familiarize yourself and to feel comfortable. It takes time to not be overwhelmed with how strong some emotions feel in your body. In the work that I do, I often spend a lot of time educating, teaching people about the perspectives of this kind of healing, teaching them about emotions, reassuring fear as people start to feel their emotions and feel overwhelmed. I remind them, no matter what I say, to check in with their body and their body's response to suggestions, advice, holistic appointments, medical appointments, whatever, and follow what their heart and body are saying so that they can build their own sense of trust and walk the healing path at their own pace. Number one, we don't heal by overriding our fears or our boundaries. And number two, only that person knows how much is too much for them at any given moment. And the expert doesn't get to tell you what's too much for you. You are the expert on your life. You are the only one who can hear from your sacred self, and your sacred self knows exactly what you need at each step of a healing journey, or even to begin a healing journey. So you would want to really honor your boundaries and make sure you have whatever education or support you need, or a slow tempo, just whatever it is that meets the need when you are new to this and feeling really uncertain. And speaking about the thinking mind, another kind of resistance is that before you can go further, you have a legitimate, concrete, analytical type question about what's happening before you can proceed with exploring this wound. It's a little bit attached to maybe being new to things, but not necessarily. Again, this is about education, about bringing the whole self on board. We heal in our body, in our emotional and creative side, and the analytical thinking self needs to be brought on board, especially if that's the side that has protected us for many years. Time for teaching, time for reassurance, time to answer questions, lots of consent. All of these things are really important. The next reason for resistance is that you have a need to protect yourself. A resistance is coming up because you feel unprotected, often because you've had to take care of or deny your own needs in order to stay safe. And you've had to take care of yourself throughout life. Being alone feels safer to you. I don't think I need to say a lot about this. I think a lot of us identify with that feeling. We have a need for independence at all costs, either because no one was taking care of our needs before, or we had to choose independence in order to feel safe. Piggybacking on that same resistance, the need to protect yourself, is that you are feeling vulnerable or worried about falling apart in front of someone. You are worried about showing emotions, about crying, of feeling fragile. Again, this is a lack of emotional safety. Up until that time, you have not had the space to be a feeling person. You have not had the comfort level around you to let those emotions out. So, again, this is a time when you want to feel your way forward and look for the right kind of environment for you, or really slow down what you're doing and take it slow. I feel the pain of this next one, even just reading it aloud. This was my story too. You have tried to heal this thing before and couldn't work through it. You feel like it's just going to be the same thing again. Disappointment, hurt, betrayal, disillusionment, mistrust. So again, education is important here, whether that's you learning to support yourself or gaining some life experience that helps you to open your perspective a little, or finding just the right person to acknowledge where you're coming from and can help you trust that you can move through this thing that hasn't budged last time you tried to move through it. Ooh, and I really like this next one. This resistance comes up when you have been told you should explore this issue, but you don't want to. I could say a lot on this one. Are you in a healing process because you want to be here? Or because someone told you to go do it? Or because society says you need to be growing and healing all the time? Or the doctor or therapist or body worker told you you have to come back in 2 weeks? And this one can often be related to the too tired to heal reason we've already talked about. Maybe the healing you need is rest, not to push. If your body has been pushed a lot or has felt overwhelmed or unsafe. And if you're feeling this kind of resistance where you've been told you should do something but you actually don't want to, this is a wonderful sign that you actually are in a healing process and you are in touch with yourself, because you recognize that what they told you you should do is not sitting well with you and your body is pushing against it. You always get to listen to your body, right? And the journey for you to figure out is, are you listening to your body so that you can move through something, or are you listening to your body so that you can release something and relax, and only you can know what that is? Paired with that same idea, another resistance may be there because you feel like you are being told to fix something, or you're getting that feeling in your healing session that somebody sitting with you just wants to fix you and it doesn't sit well with you. An example is when you are processing grief and someone seems to be emotionally shoving you down the path to getting over the grief. They might be minimizing it or showing their own discomfort with your grief. That space is probably not going to work for you. Your grief wants attention. It will resist being in an environment where it can't be seen or heard, whether you're able to put this into words or not. This is a resistance that hopefully you can sense in your body and give yourself the permission to listen to it and find a different environment or express how you're feeling to that person, right? So I have just a couple more that I want to mention. Another kind of resistance we have is we feel shame for our trauma. You feel shame over feeling the way you do, being the way you are, which makes it hard to talk about. Shame is when you feel, like Brené Brown says, that you yourself are unlovable and unworthy of belonging in life. You feel that something you have done or something you feel means, not that you're having a difficult time, but that there's something bad or wrong about you yourself. So it's hard to uncover that. It's hard to talk about with someone. You're so ashamed. And then if you're not able to do this on your own, to go into that painful shame, you'd want to find someone with a lot of empathy, a lot of warmth, gentleness, non-judgment, to be able to talk about what you're feeling. There's one more reason for resistance that I want to talk about, and this one I'm going to share a story with, and I think this one deserves more credit and more attention than we give it. Resistance may not be that you are prevented from moving forward as much as there is still something behind you that needs to be acknowledged. It could be something like grief. It could be acknowledging a memory. It could be saying goodbye to someone inside of yourself, or literally going and having a conversation. It's finding some closure or processing something that isn't processed. So many years ago, I was doing a practicum as a mind body healing mentor, what I do now. And I went to my teacher to do a healing session because I was recognizing that when I was sitting with my practicum clients, a lot of fear was coming up in my body. I was afraid. I felt not good enough. And occasionally my client would relate to me that they were stuck. They were feeling resistance of some kind. And I couldn't always figure that out with them. I had a lot kind of playing around in my head, a lot of thoughts. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to help them. And that worry was actually preventing me from being able to help them. And then this was snowballing into this fear that if I can't help the client now in this session, then maybe I won't be able to graduate this training. And then I don't get to do this wonderful thing for the rest of my life that I want to do with everything in me. It literally felt like my whole future, my whole calling, my purpose is hanging on whether I can do this process with somebody. And so that's a lot of pressure on a healing session. Like that alone would bring up some resistance, right? But my mentor sat with me, Summer, as I've mentioned in other episodes, and we just started to explore this resistance. And very quickly, as I sank into my inner awareness, I saw myself as a child, and I was sitting in a prison cell, just brick floor, 3 walls were brick, and 1 wall was bars. There was no door, there was no window, there was no key. And so Summer was sitting with me and she'd say, so just notice, like, take a few deep breaths. Are you noticing anything about the room? And I really wasn't noticing anything at all. And I was afraid, oh, I'm going to have to sit here forever. But then I started to notice a feeling in the back of my body, and it felt rigid. It felt metal, and then it became a metal flagpole going up from my pelvis, up through my back, and way, way, way up above me, maybe a story high. And at the top, there was a head, and the head was shouting aggressive things at me from way up there. It was just shouting down at me, and these things felt like they were hitting me. It was saying all the things I should and shouldn't do, and they felt so painful and like they were hitting my body. And it also felt like this was a voice very familiar, and it had been shouting at me since I was a child. It kind of felt like my dad, but I also knew it's not my dad. It was more of a masculine dominance in my life with this strong voice of judgment and expectation. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. And that was what was keeping me in my prison cell. I wanted to get out, and eventually there actually a doorway was formed to my left where the barred wall was, but I couldn't move toward it. My body and my inner self just wouldn't let me move toward that door. And the mentor sitting with me said, I wonder if there's something you need to do first. Sometimes it's just to remember something or let go of something. And so I just sat there for a minute and started, I looked around me on the floor, and then I saw a wooden chest by my feet. I opened it and it was empty. And so I was kind of, again, clueless for a minute, what's going on? And then I realized I was wearing a long dress from my neck down to my ankles, and it had a wide collar. As an aside, something you may not know about me is that the church I grew up in taught all of its women and girls that long dresses were what was pleasing to God. And so I'd been taught to keep myself covered. I'd worn dresses and nightgowns since I was a little girl. A dress in this inner awareness journey was very symbolic of all that big dominant voice had been telling me I should and shouldn't do. And suddenly, as I looked at that dress, it felt like, oh, this was a part of me, but I don't think I need it anymore. And so I just took the dress off and I folded it up and I put it in the chest. I closed the lid and said, thank you for being a part of my life, for whatever you did, and I don't need you anymore. And then I turned around and walked to the door and through it, and suddenly was in a bright, airy room, sitting with a client, doing exactly what I had wanted to do. So the resistance that popped up in this case was that there was still something I had to do or acknowledge. Before I could walk through the door that I wanted to go through, I had to take off all the expectations that I should or shouldn't be certain things in order to release me to a sense of openness in the future and in supporting my clients. And now I want to talk about what I learned further in that same healing session about what happens when we feel stuck or resistance. Because what I'd done in that moment with taking the dress off, I'd freed myself from some expectations and judgments about what I should and shouldn't be in life. So that freed me to be able to show up with the client, but it didn't yet teach me more about what that resistance or stuck moment is with a client. And so the session continued and we explored a little deeper into that because I still had the fear, if I can't do this, I won't be able to have this purpose-filled future that I want. And so in a little bit, I could see myself and a client sitting on tree stumps, side by side. In front of us stretched a network of energy, like tree roots, all connected, interconnected, zipping everywhere. They were lit up. And the client and I were holding hands, and we suddenly became little energy molecules zipping along that network, first one direction, and then we'd hit a little junction, and then we'd go along that path. And I could see and feel that there would be a moment when all of a sudden the client was stumped or stuck, when resistance came up for them. And what I could feel was that resistance was not actually an endpoint. It was actually a V shape where two of those energetic pathways would meet. It was an opportunity for a choice. Go this way or go that way. And I was holding hands with the client. I was there as a co-adventurer to be with them, but the client was in charge. They had a need in their body and they had a place that they wanted to get to that even they might not be aware of, and I certainly wasn't aware of. I'm not in their body, but it was their experience that I got to come along with them on. And in my body, I could feel some suggestions, some openness, some curiosity. And I could say to them, what about if we go this way? And then they could test it out and see if that felt good to them. And using their resistance or moment of stuckness, that could take us on a different path that actually worked better for them. And I could see in my inner awareness that it never mattered which path we took. All the paths were healing. All of them were part of that huge energy network. All of them were good. all of them were an adventure. And I was simply the teammate, the co-adventurer who got to respond to the ideas that came up in my body and suggest them to the client as a playful suggestion. What if we try this? And they got to opt in or opt out or do what worked best for them. And so now, when resistance pops up in myself and my own healing processes or due to any life events or with a client, I know all the way down to my soul that resistance is where the healing path is. And the client gets to make the choice of where they want to go, how much they are ready to feel, and how they want to feel supported. I haven't yet seen a client who, when they met resistance, wasn't willing to work with the resistance if they were supported well enough to address it. It doesn't mean they didn't come full circle in a day. It doesn't mean they figured this whole thing out, but it meant they were willing to feel into the resistance and take further steps. It's like when you're on a healing journey, the resistance is the place of strongest energy within you. It's the place of strongest conflict. The body doesn't care about the healing that's further down the path at that moment. It's asking for your awareness right here where the hard and difficult thing is. And so we can forget for a moment what that outcome is, where we were thinking we wanted to go, or the pain we're trying to heal. We have to be right in this minute where the energy is, because that's what the body is asking us to be aware of. And that's where the key is to the healing that is available to us that day. The healing that is available to us that day might simply be shifting that resistance. And you will feel freer and better because you did that little piece. You won't even be worrying about what's further down the path or the big outcome you came in with, because you will already feel lighter and better for not avoiding that resistance, but going into it a little bit, understanding it a little bit. And then that resistance over time, or maybe even in that session, will lead the person in a wide circle that addresses the fears, the shame, the exhaustion, the grief, the questions, the logic, the thing that needs to be understood or released or remembered. And in the end, they heal. I'm at the point now where I feel excited when I see resistance coming up, because I know it's where the sticking point is, the thing that's preventing me or a client from harmony in our body and our experience. And I've realized that my goal is not always to perfectly heal myself. My goal is to feel at home in my body no matter what. And when I go into resistance, I get to feel at home because I'm not blocking my awareness from anything that's happening inside. In my own healing process, I may be afraid. I may be kind of intimidated when resistance comes up because it feels unknown every time. Fear can feel like 100 different things inside of us. But by now, I've also begun to feel excited and curious when I feel resistance, because what interesting and unknown thing is waiting there to be discovered? What more could I learn about myself? What more little bit of freedom wants to come my way? And I want to be clear that healing is not necessarily the goal with me or clients. It's not that I'm trying to push myself or my client to that end goal. It's that I know from great experience that a feeling of ease is waiting us. When we are afraid, when the type of resistance is fear, the dis-ease or lack of harmony inside us comes when we avoid the fear, when we aren't aware of it, or when we are aware but push it away. But when we allow ourselves to feel and address the fear, find out what the root of it is, and meet the need that's at the root, the healing is already started. The ease is already there. And we just get to grow forward from that point, feeling so much better. The resistance is gone. That's all. The healing journey is just one lifelong path of little blips of resistance and little pathways of ease as we embrace what the resistance is telling us. Blips and ease. So let's get concrete for a minute. I did talk a little earlier in this episode about the different kinds of resistance and what they may be asking for. So when we're feeling resistance, the journey we may choose is to feel into it, and see what the resistance is. Is it fear, shame, a memory, a question? If you can't identify what it is and you do want to move forward, I'd suggest finding someone to work with who can support you. And I gave some suggestions for how to do this in episode 7, Why We Need to Be Seen. I still find support myself when I just can't seem to get to the bottom of a particular fear or shame or resistance, or when I want to deep dive into it fast instead of take a few weeks or however long it takes me to work through layers of it on my own. So with resistance, first, the opportunity is to shift our perspective. Instead of thinking this is a terrible thing coming up, we identify that we are feeling resistance, that this is a normal part of life, and we accept that. Resistance is wise. It's here to help us. It's here to help us find awareness of something we haven't been aware of earlier. Yay, us! And then we honor the reason it's there, and we treat that reason with gentleness, respect, and support. Give your body some grace. Patterns of many years are not reversed in seconds. Your body needs acceptance, not pressure, judgment, or force. So you can use some unconditional acceptance here and say to yourself, this is hard. I feel afraid. It's hard to feel afraid, but it's okay. Everyone feels this. It doesn't mean we're bad or wrong. Just talk to yourself about whatever it is with a lot of love, kind of like how you would talk to a toddler who doesn't have a lot figured out and is having a big feeling. Our bodies respond really well to gentle, respectful, and simple words. And then we want to meet the need underlying that resistance, if at all possible, either on our own or with some support. I find it's pretty easy to notice when fear is the kind of resistance. I get a big fight or flight feeling in my body. I get anxiety. Some of the other kinds of resistance are more tricky for me. It might take me a bit more time to identify what they are. But when you're wanting to feel what the resistance is, take a deep breath. And a simple tip is to ask yourself, what would feel good to me right now in whatever the block is? And you may find that you'll kind of want a nap or a couple good nights sleep. And when you have a bit of rest, you find the emotions aren't so tricky to deal with, or you feel more open to a therapy session or whatever. Or suddenly you may find that you really want to talk to a friend that listens to you well. And when you're talking with them, suddenly you're able to share the worry that's on your mind, and your friend says something to reassure you. And it feels like a load of bricks have rolled off your back, and now you feel strengthened and ready to keep working at your healing process. Resistance feels like the block, but it is the pathway to an even greater result than you were hoping for. You can try to push through, ignore it, hope it will go away, and have to drag the weight of that resistance along the path with you, if it will even let you move. I'm someone who experiences resistance in a huge felt way in my body, so it's very hard for me to keep moving when I feel it. It brings me almost to a standstill, so I have to deal with it or stop functioning. Or you can sink into the resistance, feel it, accept it, address it, meet the need, and find that the path forward is 100 times lighter and easier. This doesn't just work for healing, it works for goal setting and difficult life tasks too. Find the resistance, meet the need, watch the feeling shift, and walk forward lighter. Thank you for listening to this longer episode today. Resistance is one of my favorite topics, and I hope that something in here has helped you a little bit. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode, and I'll see you next week when we go a little deeper again.